as Dvar Torah. I don't know if he meant it quite that way, but he did use that adjective.
He did or he did not?
He did.
Even Moshe wasn't perfect.
Right, but I think
he meant contrast the tzaddik personality versus the Baal Tshuva personality.
Right.
Tzaddik doesn't mean perfect. It means that they're by nature they're doing the right thing as opposed to struggling with their Yetzer Hara. Right?
Yeah, he said that Yehuda, who lived with the storm inside of him, ultimately that trumped the Yosef, who was tzaddik yesod olam. He was I don't know. There are lots of divrei Torah that say that he did, but I don't know about Chazal. Lots of Meforshim said that he considered his complicity in and there's some who say that Asor Harugi Malchus. So, there's a beautiful quote from Shamshin Aslapola. He was a Baal Mikubal, a big Baal Mikubal. And
sorry, who's it?
Shamshin Ostrapola, that's how he's called. He was off the charts. I mean, his Kabbalistic applications to Torah. So he has one on this, the whole Masa book of the Tzayin. And you have to take Ma'aser from the calves and the lambs that are born every year, so you have to take a tenth. So how's it done? You put them all in one corral, and then you make there's a gate, and you get them to come out one at a time, and every tenth you mark with some kind of a chalk or something, so that every 10th one is Ma'aser, and those are the ones that you take up to Yerushalayim. It's kind of just an interesting digression. They tell a story of that Ramatala on a disciple that he once went to raise money. I think maybe I told the story. He once went to raise money. So he came into a big veer, I think, in Kiev. And before he asked him for any kind of a donation, he said to him, "Would you show me around your home?" And well, this fellow really had a very extensive kind of he had a magnificent home, and he had a stable, and he had all kinds of paintings. I mean, he was very well-to-do. So he began to show him around. He showed him all these paintings that he had were very valuable, and all of the silver and others. And then he said, "Okay, man, can you show me your estate?" So he took him around. He showed him his orchards and his gardens, and he showed him his stables with his horses, and so then finally he sat down and he solicited a contribution. So and the Gvir was generous, but the Gvir was very kind of curious about why he. You know that the Rebbe did not really have much of an interest in ostentation or that. So he said to him, "Can the Rebbe please?" He said to him, "Yes." He said, "It says in the Torah, Chol Masa book of Tzayin, that the way in which you give Ma'aser is that you take all your animals and then you have them come out of one gate, and then every 10th one you mark was mice. So he said, why did the Torah do that? Why don't you just look at the, say, I have over here 100 sheep, so I'm going to take 10 and make them miser. So he said, because the Rabbi Michel understood that people who have a considerable material holdings, they kind of are attached to that. So if you say to them at one shot, take 10 out of that, it's hard for them to do that because it's part of their, it's part of their wealth. He says, on the other hand, if what you do is you say, let them out, they say, 1 is mine, 2 is mine, 3 is mine, 4 is mine, 9 is mine. Okay, 10, that's for God. 1 is mine. So he says that's a lot easier for the person to give it up. He says if after he does this thing, 1 is mine, 2 is mine, 3 is mine, and by the time he got 9 is mine. Okay, 1 is for God. So he said, I wanted to solicit Jesus, but first I wanted to go through with you so you have some sense of what you have. Then you can be magnanimous because you have a kind of a. He said that's the way. He said the Rabbi Michel understands. There was a period of time when I was giving lectures to groups of people who had no connection at all to Yiddishkeit. They were moms when you say Tinnik Shenishba. They had no concept at all, not about Shabbos, not about kashrus. They were totally estranged. So I didn't even have any at the time, any agenda about being Mekayim. I just really wanted them to just respect the fact that Yiddishkeit, that there was Judaism had something to offer. So I did several sessions on charity. So one of them was this exercise where I had them try to define themselves, and we went through this once where they define themselves in very static ways. So I said to them, if a person defines themselves in ways which most people do by the way our culture and our society respects people. How do we respect as a culture? We respect people who are either very rich or very powerful. Things which are reflected in physical things. So, if that's the way in which we think of ourselves, we think of ourselves by the cars that we drive, and the homes that we own, and our stock portfolio, and what we have in our bank accounts. So that's really part of our self-definition. That's how we think of ourselves. If you say to somebody, I want you to amputate give me your right arm, it's going to hurt. And they may do it, but it's going to hurt. You may make a strong argument that they have to give you your right arm, and they'll do so, but it's painful. The Torah says that in the mitzvah of charity, I should say, so it says, no saying titin loy, you shall give to him, but in your heart shall not hurt you when you give him. So, charity, the Torah says, is something that's not supposed to hurt. No saying titin loy, your heart shouldn't hurt you. So, if you have that kind of a self-definition, then when you give charity, it's going to hurt. On the other hand, if you have a dynamic definition of yourself, which is, here's who I am. I am a person who loves to be giving to people. I'm a person who believes in the fact that there is a Beri Olam, and that the Beri Olam has created the world out of generosity. I want to emulate him. Then giving is going to make you feel bigger. It's going to make you feel more expansive. So the Torah is really saying to us that the kind of giving that in charity is a reflection on whether we think of ourselves as our culture thinks of ourselves, or do we think ourselves in terms of the principles of our faith? Do we have a dynamic self-definition, or have we handed our definition to the street? In any event, so he says over here, so the 10th one is the one that's Kodesh. So the Sham Shanas Apollo says this, takes this, I'm missing part of this one. I think he says like V'chol. V'chol is, he uses this as an acrostic. V'chol is, I think, V'chi Lechinam. Meiser is an acrostic for Meis Akiva. Shahoya Roya. Right? For nothing that Akiva, who was a shepherd, died. That he died, and he was a shepherd of Bokovitzain, right? He was a shepherd. All of the other 9 Hagugei Malchus, all of the other 9 martyrs, Tachas HaShovet, they died in place of the Shvatim. And they were a kapar of the Shvatim. Asiri, Rabbi Akiva, he was a kapara for the 10th one, who was Hashem. The Sanhedrin, they were 9, they needed 10. So they were mitzvah of the Shechina. And that's why the Shechina was sworn to secrecy. He couldn't tell anything to Yaakov Avinu. So he says, so Akiva was the kapara for him. So he says, Asiri, the 10th.
This answers the Kaili's question, but there were only 9, right? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Because Reuven
wasn't there, and
Binyamin
wasn't there,
and Yosef
was
the victim.
Right.
So only 9 brothers. So
right. So
Hashem was the Shechina, was the 10th.
Right.
We're saying that now we're seeing that Asiri.
Rabbi Akiva, Kodesh Hashem. He was good Hashem. That's what the Gemara says. Ashkecha Akiva shenishmascha yotza be'echad, because he died with the Krishma on his lip. But according to this. That your neshama went out for the sake of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's a master public thing. But the other thing, the reason I told you this is because according to other shittas, the 10th was for Yosef, because he also was complicit. He was the reason that they were that they were envious of him is because he did things to bring it upon himself. So they say that the 10th one was really a second.
Well, according to this Joshua, the 10th was Kodesh Baruch Hu. Is that why the brothers then couldn't mevatel their shvua, that they wouldn't tell Yaakov? You needed all 10. Kodesh Baruch Hu wasn't mevatel.
Right.
Did Yaakov hear about the Mechira herself?
And there's so many different sheets that he knows. They do not know that he suspects. There's something there.
I would see maybe that. I was going to say it seems maybe that he did know, because the brothers said in Parshat Vayechi, Abba Yasi was kapara, but they made that up. So the Gemara says that there are 3 things you can lie about. They went for shalom. So that was not 3 things, but 3 instances, 3 rayas that you can lie for shalom if you need to. And so we see that they lied, meaning that it's not a raya. He didn't ask them to do it.
Yeah, it's a different.
Chadainano means he was not shalom with the idea that he was daraf.
Maybe can I ask you a question on this tzedakah? Mort. So this Rebbe came to collect tzedakah. It took a long time of the Baal tzedakah's time. B'zman hazeh, you have a sense that, ultimately these people are coming to collect. It's not the first thing they want to do is collect. They don't want to makdish all this time. Be meshachrer, get them, let them go as quick as possible. Don't drag them off, and they don't want to drag you off. They really want to get going. I mean, what's the right midah here?
The right midah is to receive them with dignity. That's the most important thing. Sometimes it's just because we're busy, and sometimes it's because we have a problem, we have an attitude. But the most important thing that you can do is to receive them with, give them respect. If they want to talk, and you can afford the time, it's a mitzvah to listen to them, because at least they feel heard. One of the things that I've spoken about many times to my community in Milwaukee is about receiving these people respectfully and letting them feel that they've been heard. And I hear back from Shalachim who come that their experience in Milwaukee is different than in other communities, because they're received warmly. It's really the most important thing. My brother, the psychiatrist, says that my mother told him that when he started to walk as an infant, that there was a meshulach in the room, and he took his first steps, and everybody was so excited, and they were clapping. He took his first steps, and this meshulach said to my mother, in a kind of a very sad way, he said to her, when I was an infant, I started to walk. He said, I'm sure that that my parents were clapping, and whoever was in the room was clapping. He says, now when people hear my footsteps, they don't clap. So that's kind of, the people who come to us with, and even the people sticking around over here with for the shekel that they get or less. They were once little babes in their mother's arms, and their mothers looked at them and hoped that they would be, that they would be people of dignity. And we don't quite see them that way, and that's a big. They say that the Rabbi Michel of Annapolis once went to ask money for his own needs, and the person gave him money, and then he walked out, and the donor kind of looked out the window at him and saw that Rabbi Michel kissed his hand, his own hand. So he called him back. He said to him, Rabbi, why did you do that? He said, when I I take out my tefillin, I kiss them. When I put them back, I kiss my tefillin. He says, I kiss an asterisk. Why? He says, because it's a chefta shel mitzvah. He said, you did a mitzvah with me. He said, I became your chefta shel mitzvah. He says, so why wouldn't I treat myself? For you, I was like the tefillin. He said, so why shouldn't I consider that something that deserves to be kissed? But it's hard for us to see it that way, and a lot of times we're just annoyed. And all of these people have very legitimate needs, and it's not fun to come and ask for money. When we created our institutions in Milwaukee, the kollel and the cheder. What we did at the time was not particularly popular in Milwaukee, and everybody, including people who were staunch friends for tens of years, suddenly shut down on us. It was a very, very painful experience, and I was forced to travel to collect money in order for us to be able to create the kollel and the cheder. And I felt it on my own skin what it means to go to people and ask them for money. Not fun.
Is it? I mean, there's different degrees, right? But let's say the person who comes to knock on your door in the evening. If you're not intending to give, or you're whatever, in a bad mood or whatever the circumstances might be, is it better not to open the door, or to nevertheless overcome where you're holding and open the door?
I would have to believe that if you can't receive somebody in a way in which they feel, kind of affirmed, that maybe you're better off not opening the door. If somebody walk away feeling denigrated is.
Is it? I see sometimes people, give to their child. Somebody's coming around, they give the kid, they give their son or their daughter. Okay, here, give it to the Mishloach. Is that degrading to the Mishloach to take money from a kid like that? You're trying to you're trying to okay, do a mitzvah, don't give him money. But is that degrading to the Mishloach to have a little child come and give him money? Is it better that your kid sees you give him money as opposed to you telling the kid to give the person money?
There's a very interesting Rashi here. Rashi in Pashas Vayira. So, Avram, and the Malachim came, right? The three angels came because Hashem sent them. He wanted to be fulfilled the mitzvah Chnos Sorchim. So Avram ran to get the book of Eikach and Boker Toiv, and he got a really succulent prospect over there. Eaten al anar, and he gave it to the lad. So Rashi says, Yishmael. He gave it to Yishmael. Lechan choy b'mitzvahs, to educate him in mitzvahs. So that would suggest that that it's legitimate. If you want to be machanech your child in mitzvah tzedakah, gemilas chasadim, that you would do that. On the other hand,
the Malachim, they weren't starving. They didn't even need to eat.
Huh?
The Malachim weren't starving. They didn't even need to eat. They just didn't they just sit down with Avram because they wanted to be nice?
Right.
But what did he know? They didn't appear as Malachim. They appeared as people.
But you see that the Medrash says over here that he told him, Yukach no ma'at, take some water for yourselves and wash your feet and then rest underneath the tree. So the Medrash over there says that whatever Avraham Avinu did by himself, Hashem rewarded Avraham Avinu's children, meaning Bnei Yisrael, directly. So all of the other things, and I'll give you bread, and so that Hashem gave them the man directly. But the water, he gave them through Moshe with the whole thing with the striking the rock. Right? So he says the reason that he did it through Moshe, through a shliach, is because he didn't give them the water himself. He told them, you take the water. So at Midah, you didn't give them the water, so you're going to get the water through a shliach. But Hashem did give them the Slav by himself. So it would seem the fact that even though Avram Avinu asked Ishmael to do it, that was not a chesron.
Did Ishmael give it to the Malachim himself, or Ishmael repaired it? Ishmael gave it to the Malachim, or repaired it? Was he actually giving it to them? They may have not seen him preparing it. Maybe it's...
Apparently, I don't know.
Don't we say it was Avram?
I'm not sure. No?
We learned that from Maras HaMachpelah. That's how he figured out where Maras HaMachpelah was when he went to get the sheep, no? So Avram went to get it himself. He was the one who was Megaleh. So he made the first effort and was Meshatef himself.
Okay. How do we get into this?
Yes.
Tzedakah.
Yes, the question about tzedakah. You can also, by the way, both of you give. You could give and you give to your kids to give. It's not not one or the other.
Right. It occurs to me sometimes, but I like this Rashi. So
Yeah, you like that
I
one.
think it'll be,
Get up cheap.
not that I don't want to be part of it, but
Get it cheap.
I think that I think any one of the Mishalachim would respect the fact that you're doing this to Machanachim in the mitzvah.
There's going to be somebody who's going to be slighted. There's always
What?
not everybody is the same, so
No. So
you have to make a judgment.
Right.
What about have
You
somebody
have
opinion
in,
that he leaves the coins on the table, so that when the people come by in the davening for the shekel, they just take it off. That he doesn't. It's like Eli has no connection to them. So is that like, oh, that's easy money? They'll think it's great, or it's like.
You're talking about a minion. You're not talking about someone's house. You're talking about
Not a minion, yeah,
where
minion.
the guy
You know,
just
and
makes
usually
around
come
very
around,
quickly.
and the guy has all these. So
They
the
don't-
people
they
come
don't
around,
care.
they don't care.
Those guys
easy.
Yeah, no,
But is that like sort of, to me? It seems like it's like a lack of cover. Like when you can't just pick it up and do the act of giving. But maybe that's wrong. Maybe it's like he's
There's
open
a-
and
sometimes they come around in the middle of Christmas, so it's not fun.
No, there's somebody, saw a video, asked Rabbi Michel if you have to give during, I forget, maybe it was during Krishma, Bikkus Krishma. He said you don't have to. But, it's going to be stereo kavana, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's really.
That's a good point, anyway.
I hear it, but for whatever reason, you don't get the kind of volume. I mean, some days you don't have anybody here at all, but they're in Yerushalayim or in Borough Park.
It depends with shuls. Here in Rabbi Michel, some shuls.
Yeah, there are some shuls
shuls
that's
you
very
can get
busy.
10 people come across the davening. Yeah, 45 minutes.
Bust them in.
Take one look at the building and then move on.
Also, if
They start throwing coins.
for never for a woman with a shver matzav comes, and she's not a schnorrer, she's not one of these guys, so she might be sensitive to being treated that way, for lack of not understanding.
Yeah.
We have a neighbor that puts an envelope by the door outside because the kids and whatever during night, so people come in, so they put money in there beforehand, and they say, please take whatever amount. That better thing so that you don't need a, like,
what's their address?
Yeah, I don't know. It's certainly, again, part of the mitzvah of tzedakah is the empathy. It's the mishtatev b'tzaro. It's making the person feel like you care.
I mean, I felt that way that when my daughter was having someone at the door for tzedakah. I sized the guy up. My daughter's one open for a man, so they'll come and tell me. And then I've got this dilemma: do I walk there with a shekel in my hand, or do I take it out in front of the person? Is there an Indian? You're not. I'm walking. I'm not interested in this story. As a shekel, leave me alone.
Again, I think the important thing is looking at the person warmly, giving, wishing him hatzlacha. I think those are I think that's the biggest part of the tzedakah.
Like a drink of water, a cup of coffee.
Yeah. And unfortunately, there are those Mishloachim who give all the other Mishloachim a bad name. They're they're nasty. They're not grateful. They're not appreciative, and they just sometimes they're obnoxious.
But really can ask maybe my last question, because maybe everybody wants to continue with something else, but someone once told me that Baruch Hashem, there's certain Mishulachim that don't have the Derech Eretz or a Meshaker in terms of what their needs are, because if there wasn't a Meshaker, we'd be forced to give to everybody.
It's a Gemara in Ksubas.
So I'm saying, are we allowed to judge someone's cause?
Again, Rumzishi used to say that it's all Midah connected Midah. He said it about Yirmiyah Hanovi. He has a famous thing where these I don't know, whatever they were, the young vagabonds made fun of them, and he cursed them that so the animals came out and tore them apart. So that was So he said that Rabbi Michel said that Yirmiyah, when he was treated this way, so he was mispalo. So that's what happened. He was mispalo. He was mispalo that they should be cursed with aniyim she'enim muganim, poor people who were not worthy. So he said, why was he mispalo for that? So he said, because Yirmiyah Novi felt that in order for these people to deserve Rachmi Shemayim, that if they were to give to Aniyim She'enim Hunganim, so Midah Keneged Midah, Hashem would say they gave charity to poor people who were unworthy. So we in heaven, and in heaven, the Beis Shalmayla has to allow for the fact that the hashpah should come to them, even though they're unworthy. Midah Keneged Midah. So that was it. That was the thing with the young people who were asked to give. It was a different instance. But Rabbi used to say, if somebody comes to you, and even though you think that he's unworthy, give to him, because Midah Keneged Midah. If you start to discriminate, then you're really asking in Shemayim, they should open up your file and say, well, is this person worthy of getting, instead of just give.
I became a little bit friendly with somebody by the KSY in New York City. He was on crutches. One day he gave me a ride in his Mercedes. He was collecting because he had an accident. He had to pay for it.
Said it, Divrei Chaim once gave charity to somebody who came to him, gave him a big sob story. So he gave him very, very generously, and later on somebody saw this particular Mishulach eating a very lavish meal in a restaurant. He had ordered for himself delicacies. So he ran back to the Divrei Chaim and said to him, you know what the person that came to you was saying, you know what he did? He went and bought for himself all these kind of delicacies. The Chaim said, really? So he took out some more money. He said, here, it's some more money. Go and give it to him. I didn't realize that he had such expensive tastes.
In some communities, I think Baltimore for one, maybe there are others, where anyone who's collecting has to go before the Rav
Oh, they have this.
and have be
Chicago has
verified.
that. No, there are many communities have that now. They have to get verified, and they come with
Temple.
Yeah, the picture on it and the
picture
level
on
of
it, In Chicago, you have to they take the picture of the person, and in the background is a picture of the Chafetz Chaim. It's a real guilt trip.
Lastly, are you allowed to reduce your tzedakah? If you've been giving a certain person that comes every month a certain amount of money, are you allowed to reduce that?
Are you allowed to what?
Reduce it.
I mean, if you can't, if your financial situation dictates that you have to be more discreet, so I guess you're allowed to do that. If you do it, it would be appropriate for you to, excuse yourself to that person.
Is there a suggested distribution of tzedakah, poor people, Torah institutions, health institutions?
It's very hard. There are halachas in the tzedakah about priorities. So your immediate relatives are a priority over other needs. People in your own community are a priority. Tailor things are a priority.
When we say community, we would define that, like today, communities are virtual. I remember one of my rebbeim at Passaic, Passaic had a real downturn economically. About 7 years ago, it was very bad. I know people were making $500,000 a year that were making $100,000 a year, which a lot of people would say, I love to make $100,000 a year, but that's disastrous for somebody who lives at that level. And people were still giving their yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael, and they were banned from like their old communities, and some of their band came out and said, you got to look around locally. You can't give tzedakah outside the community anymore, especially in the time of crisis. So, but then their response was, well, it is my community because I'm still in touch with my Rebbe from my yeshiva, from my alma mater. And how does that shtim?
Beats me. A lot of this is going to be based on, the truth of the matter is that most substantial contributions are given on a basis of a personal relationship. So I'm not sure I do it. When things are equal in the fact that we don't have a personal relationship, then all of those criteria are gonna weigh in. But most of the time, those are not the bigger donations. The bigger donations that we give are because we have a relationship with the Rebbe, or because we have a relationship with an institution. That was our alma mater.
Touch on Yosef being embalmed at the end of this upcoming parsha. How that works.
Good segue.
Yosef, Yaakov. Yaakov being embalmed. What?
We're interested in figuring out how he got from tzedakah to embalmment.
If the Rav could explain that, we get to that question. There you go. Oh, now we got the topic for today's.
Meitz Chashiv Kani. It's a little bit reminiscent of they have this this Badchen in America, Yaakov Miller. He's a riot. So he once said, why do they put on a nifter, someone who died? Why did they put him on? They put him on a kittel. Why do they do that? You know, the tachrichim are like a kittel. He said they want to remind them of the Yom HaChuppah. It's the reverse. Okay.